What does this model, and even this model all have in common? Let's find out on Celebrating Aviation with Mike Machat. What these three models have in common is that they were all reproduced as these three models. And stay tuned, because at the end of this program, I'm going to solve a 40-year-old mystery about these two kits. You're not going to want to miss it. The models you saw reproduced were from Lodela, which is Revel of Mexico. And for a complete history of Lodela, there's nothing better on YouTube than one produced by my friend Max of Max's Models. Shout out and greetings to all the great glue troopers. And there's a link in the title block of this video, and it takes you right to it if you want to hear the entire history of the company. But what I'm going to do is tell you the story of my involvement with Lodela as a cover artist and direction sheet and box side panel artist as well. And it all begins on March 12th, 1978, at what is called the Kit Collectors Exposition and Sale. This is also referred to as the Keller Show, named after founder Bob Keller, who started this project in 1975. And with the exception of COVID, it ran continuously and is, I should say, running continuously to this day. But on March 12th, 1978, this was the room. And if you notice at the top right, the row up there, I was on the right-hand end, and Ron Ferreira was on the left-hand end. Ron was the American rep for Lodela, Revel, Mexico, and we hit it off and became good friends. And before too long, I was contracted to do a series of new covers for the company. We began with this one, the Grumman F9F8 Cougar, and we were going to do it in the Blue Angels markings. And that would be followed up by the Republic F84F Thunderstreak in Thunderbirds markings. Kind of a neat idea. It had never been done. Now, before we go any further, a quick mention that, again, this happened in 1978. I was just finishing my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at Cal State Long Beach. And at night, I was working for McDonnell Douglas on night shift in the art department. But wait, there's more. That's also the year I began my own freelance business, Mike Machat Illustration. And I should mention that all the major aerospace companies had art departments and encouraged their artists to have freelance work on the outside. Of course, I mentioned many times that Jack Lenwood, who did 600 plus Revel covers, worked for Northrop originally. And so the company encouraged this to keep the artist current in all of the new industry activities. And so I began my freelance business that same year. Now, I was working in watercolor. This is kind of the boot camp for learning how to paint. And watercolor is neat in terms of learning the disciplines. It's not the greatest for technical illustration. And so right at this time, that same year, I was making the transition to designer's gouache, which is like a fine grade tempera paint. It's opaque, water-based. And this was the beginning of the technique that led eventually to my oil paintings, but it was a critical step, and this all happened at the time that I was contracted for the Lodela covers. So let's look at that series. We began with the beautiful Grumman F9 F8 Cougar, and to keep it accurate, I didn't want to use an exact maneuver, because again, this was a different team. They flew slightly differently in the Cougars than the A4 Skyhawks, which were being used at that time during that year. And so I went to the Blue Angels brochure and used this maneuver, the Delta, as a basis for designing the Lodela covers. So I flopped it, reversed the direction, made it a 4-ship, which the team was at that time, and came up with a schematic that you see here based on that diagram in the Blue Angels brochure. So this is going to be at Point Magoo. I had the grandstands. I had the Team C-54 in the background. And then I added the finished view of the jet. And again, I was trying to keep it in the genre of the box art, with the airplanes coming at you in a dramatic angle and kind of exploding out of the box, as it were. There is the box art in its final form, a watercolor painting. This was the cover of that kit. which was released in late 1978. And I was contracted as well to do the side panel profile that you see here. And it was a successful kit. It sold well, and we were kind of on our way. Now, as far as the F-84 in Thunderbird's markings, it evolved as far as the concept drawing, which you see, which would be a mirror image of the Blue Angels Cougar. But this project got sidetracked. It was tabled because this airplane moved into the next slot in rotation. And this, of course, was the Argentinian Navy A4 Skyhawk. It was based on this kit originally from Revel. And an interesting cover, not one of my favorites, and I say that with love, but it just, for some reason, the coloration on this kit just always affected me. It always looked like the airplane was trapped inside the belly of a giant salmon or something. It just, I never understood the coloration. And no, the A4 doesn't have an afterburner, but be that as it may, I kind of liked the plan view of the airplane in the background, so I did keep that. And this was my comp or comprehensive, which is a rough, loose indication of the final art, but it is the one where you make all the corrections and fine tuning. And that became this painting, also done in transparent watercolor. Well, then, as I said, I made the transition to gouache, and the F-27 kit from Revel was our first subject of a series of airliners. And this was done in designer gouache. This is the actual board. This is, the image area was 8 inches by 14 inches, which is about 125% up from the box size. And so the beauty of gouache is you can work nice and small if you have to. And you see the crop marks there. And then on the right-hand edge are the brush strokes where I'm matching color and testing colors and so on. And then this crops to this image. And this becomes the box art, as you see here. And this is a fun project. It was neat. The markings fit on the airplane beautifully. And then again, I did the direction sheet profile, painting guide and decal marking guide. And that's the final that you see there. What was really cool about this kit, one of Revel's better airliners from the entire series back in the 50s, is that you could send away. It came in the Fairchild Company markings, but you could send away for any or all of these additional airlines for 10 cents per decal sheet. There was a coupon on the direction sheet, and you could actually build your model in any one of these colors. So Lodela adapted that idea for the Swift Air F-27, which was flying up and down the coast of California about that time. And this was the master decal sheet for that airplane, which was a supplement if you bought the Lodela kit. Next up was the Douglas DC-9, the DC-9 Series 10, the Baby 9 as it was called, the first iteration of the airplane. And the airline they chose was Bonanza. And again, here we are in the dramatic box art type view. This became this cover. Ron was the art director for these projects, and I respected his input greatly. And for some reason, he always insisted on having contrails. I tried to explain to him that, you know, a jet buzzing Monument Valley at 2,000 feet isn't going to be producing contrails. But the art director is always right. And so this was the box art. And something else was going on about this time. The Airliner shows, the whole Airliner enthusiast movement was beginning. And this impacted the box art, as you'll see in a moment. But this is a view of a typical Airliner show with models. Shout out to my dear friend Ruben and Robbie, who are seen there in the foreground. And the Airliner enthusiast market redirected the box art, and I'll show you how. This is a side view of an airplane. But at that time, there were a couple of Airliner magazines. There was the Captain's Log from the Airline Historical Association. And so one of the photographers was named Bruce Drum, and he was famous for having these clean, he did not take this particular photo, but he was famous for having shots just like this, where you could see every window, count the windows, see the doors, and most importantly, the end number of the airplane. And this was called the Bruce Drum shot. And so that really affected how we were going to go ahead and approach the next few models. And the first one up was the Ozark DC-9. So now you can see it's a more placid view of the airplane. more graceful view of the airplane, not as dramatic, but you can count the windows and doors, emergency exits, and see the N number. And so this became the Ozark DC-9 kit. This is my, of all the ones I've done, this is my personal favorite. It just had a feel of coming out of the storm over St. Louis with the arch, and it just worked to me. And plus it was a Douglas DC-9, so you can't go wrong with that. Next up, the 727 kit, the Series 100, and that became the Aero Peru aircraft over the Andes. And again, airliner view, the Bruce Drum view. And these were fun paintings. I should mention that these were done in about 3 days time. It's a water-based paint, it dries fast. And you know, good examples of good commercial art as a project. Then this is what they call the paste up. This is the roadmap for the box colors that will be added in where you see the black there, and that goes on to the final. Next one up was the DC-8 Series 21, the short body airplane, and we kind of broke the tradition here, and I'll show you why in a sec. But we went with the Vyasa airplane, looking up at it because it was just a nice view of the airplane. I've seen this view before. Could it be? Oh yes. This was my Prismacolor pencil drawing of the Eastern DC-8 Golden Falcon jet. And I just love the view, and Ron agreed. We adapted it for the Vyasa cover. But my rule is, if you're going to steal somebody else's art, just make sure it's your own. And then we come to this, the United Airlines Super 61 kit, released in 1970 originally. And then we were going to do this, but there was a surprise. We were going to do it as a different model that you see here. I'm showing you a Jack Lenwood trick. The DC-8 has 4 engines. How many contrails do you see here? 2. Classic Jack. He made you look and made you buy the model. But we're going to take this kit and we're going to do it as this airplane, the Flying Tigers DC-8 63 freighter. In this case, a convertible freighter. You see the windows there. And this, you know, jumbo jet, this airplane came out in 1967, so had a 3-year jump on the 747. But it was a 250 passenger airplane in passenger version. And Mac charters, I think they squeezed even more than that. I flew on this airplane to Japan from San Francisco. But the whole idea was that we would have a different version of the DC-8 in the model. So this is the beginning of the box art, mapping out the size and proportions. And there's the painting. And the difference in the 63 model is the engines and pylons. There's also 6-foot wingtip extensions. And the engines are in a more sleek pylon and nacelle arrangement. It was called the cutback pylon and flow-through nacelle. The idea here is that we would offer the model builder a 63 or a 61, depending on what they wanted to build. And the engines for the 63 were taken from Douglas engineering drawings, and they would be installed in the box as a vacuform sheet. A little bit more difficult to build, but when they were finished, they would look just as good as the finished plastic parts. And so we had all the information, all the data that was given to Lodela and for the manufacture of the vacuform. So I did the decal sheet. As you see here, we had 2 versions of the markings. And there was the box art. It was sent to Mexico for processing. The model was put into production, and there was just one little surprise. They did not include the vacuform 63 engines. And that happened at the last minute. Ron called and told me, and I just thought, oh boy, this is not going to be a good thing. Yes, Flying Tigers did fly the 61 model with the larger nacelles and engines that you see that were in the kit, actually. But they did not have what was on the box art. And I was just very concerned about our truth in advertising, aspect of it. It was not a good decision, and I had no control. Ron and I had no control. I'm not trying to pass the buck. I'm just saying that it was a corporate decision made at the very last minute. The model was already committed, had a release date. It was in production. It was done. The painting was done. And we kind of got a nasty surprise. And you can imagine the blowback that happened from the modelers when that kit came out. So my apologies, but that's how it happened. Next up was the Boeing 707, and this was the original iteration of the 707 kit from Revel. To be more accurate, it was the Jet Horizon series, the fan jet powered 720 or 707B, and this was the version of the kit that was going to be used for a buildup that you see here from American Airlines. But look at the model and then look at these markings. Holy cow, there were 11 colors on this decal sheet. They were completed. The box top was painted, as you see here. This would have been a challenge, I think, for the model builder, but this was the next one up in rotation. And I got a phone call from Ron, and he was a bit agitated and a bit excited. And as luck would have it, as things sometimes happen, Murphy's Law, this painting was destroyed in shipment to Mexico. It never got there. Or if it did, it didn't look like this. And so for whatever reason, the painting was destroyed. I was paid for it, and it did not go into production, and it never saw the light of day. So you're looking at a pretty rare image, and I just wanted to share that with you. Would have been a good looking model, actually. And then something else happened. The final model that I was involved with was the DC-10. This kit came out 2 or 3 years before there was an Airbus, so that's the issue on the title. But the DC-10 kit was going to be done in the markings of 2 Mexican airlines, and it was a unique model of the airplane. The DC-10-10 was the domestic version that you see here. Has 2 main landing gear and CF6-25 engines. And here's this DC-1030, which is the intercontinental version. General Electric CF6-50C2 uprated engines, more powerful, and a center main landing gear that you've seen in photos, I'm sure, and much like the KC-10 tanker, which was based on this airplane as well. Well, if you take a DC-1010 and merge it with the features of the DC-1030, but keep the light weight, you've got an airplane that is perfectly suited for hot, high operations as Mexico City, and that is called a DC-1015. And that was done in the markings of Mexicana, which you see here. But this was the time when the model companies were moving to photographs instead of artwork. And so this was the end of my role as a cover artist, but I was still doing the decals and side panels. And so we had the Mexicana DC-1015 and the Aero Mexico. Excuse me, this was my painting guide on the direction sheet. And I did the decals as well. So it was a great run. I did 9 covers total and 22 projects total for the company. It was a wonderful association. I so very much loved working with Ron Ferreira. And it was just a great relationship and my first corporate job. So there you have it, a look at what it's like to be a cover artist for Revel of Mexico. Special thanks to the great people that made this possible. Of course, the great Ron Ferreira, the late Craig Cadera, and Bob Keller. And as always, special thanks to Max Conkey of Max's Models, the best model channel on YouTube. And a quick reminder, our first paid program is now in production. It's underway, and it'll be brought to you in time for the holidays. It's going to be Aviation History by the Decade, the Fabulous 50s. And if you've signed up to be notified, you're going to receive a 50% discount on the pricing. If you haven't signed up, there's a link in the title block, and there's no obligation, but you will be the first to be notified of the scheduling of the new paid program series. So thank you for celebrating aviation with Mike Machat. Appreciate your watching this program. It's always a joy to bring these videos to you, and we'll be having many more in the months and hopefully years to come. If you haven't subscribed, please do. We'd love to have you on board, and please hit the like button on the way out. As always, until next time, take care.